Being an alumni of Detroit High School, my grandfather Jim Lyons grew up in Kenilworth and started his family there in 1960 to 1962, but eventually moved to Summit, New Jersey for his job in 1962, and they lived there till 1973.
Which is why we moved there. We liked it.
Yeah. Did you move there for your job?
Yes, I was transferred by the A.C. Nielsen Company, my employer, out there, and to our New York office. And I worked in New York City.
Mm-hmm. And you worked for A.C. Nielsen?
A.C. Nielsen Company?
Okay. So
A.C. Nielsen is a famous company for television ratings. It was a global marketing company with the headquarters in New York City. My grandfather was moved out to the East Coast to work in client service office, is working with customers. After 5 or 6 years, he became the head of his client service program. Commuting back and forth from New York City and Summit.
any because obviously the 1960s were a time of a lot of political and civil, there was a lot of movements going on. Did that affect the work and business world at all in significant ways or no?
No, I don't remember anything like that. In New York, there's always some group that's protesting something or being a champion of some cause, so that's kind of normal out there.
Yeah.
I don't recall anything to do with civil rights or anything like that, if that's what you're asking.
Anything
My grandfather mentioned that he didn't have any recollection of any sorts of riots while working in New York City and living in New Jersey, although from my research I found out that there had been 3 big race riots. These race riots occurring in Paterson, Elizabeth, and Jersey City, New Jersey. Then the biggest race riot of all happening in Newark, New Jersey. The black population felt excluded by the poor urban conditions, declining industrial jobs, and the lack of representation they had in the business world. This created tension, and this tension was a part of the reason why the race riot started. Starting with the Jersey riot, there was a heavy damage done. 71 stores being damaged, and 46 people were injured. In the Paterson race riot, 20 stores were damaged and 8 people injured. In the Elizabeth riot, 6 people were injured and 17 stores were damaged. The aftermath was 135 people arrested. Lastly, the New York riot lasted 5 days, 24 died, and 1,600 arrested.
Did you run into racism at all?
Oh, racism?
Yeah.
No, in fact, I don't remember anything like a riot.
With the amount of race riots that occurred in New Jersey in the 10 years of my grandfather living there and constantly commuting back and forth to New York City through some of these cities, and then on top of it, him having no recollection of any race riots or racism affecting him, this shows how active the civil rights movement was in his life, which was not active at all. Especially with these cities with the race riots happening not being far away. New York and Summit are only 12 miles apart, Paterson and Summit are only 23 miles apart, Jersey City and Summit are only 17 miles apart, and Elizabeth and Summit are only 15 miles apart. When looking back on the moments when he found out that MLK was assassinated versus John F. Kennedy, there is a significant difference.
Where were you, when JFK was assassinated? Do you remember, where you were?
I remember very well when John Kennedy was assassinated in 1962, that was, November in 1962.
Mm-hmm.
I was in our office in New York City.
Yeah.
And I was manager of this office, part of the Nielsen Company. And I remember it was 1 o'clock or so in the afternoon. You remember things like that.
Yeah.
When somebody came in and said, the president has been shot.
Mm-hmm.
I said, what? Yeah, I didn't believe it. And somebody picked it up on television, apparently. And so I let everybody go home early that day. It was a work day.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I went home early, and my parents were visiting us back at the house in Summit. And we talked about it, of course. So that's when John Kennedy was assassinated, yeah. Really, I think especially after John Kennedy was shot.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, Martin Luther King was assassinated also.
Yeah. Do you remember where you were?
A couple
when you
years
heard about
later.
that?
Pardon me?
Do you remember where you were when you heard about that assassination?
No, I don't. I was thinking about that the other day. I guess because there was a reenactment of the Martin Luther King assassination on television.
There was.
No, I don't remember where I was that day.
The idea that my grandfather had remembered every detail about John F. Kennedy's assassination versus Martin Luther King Jr.'s assassination, and also that he sent everyone home on the day of the JFK assassination versus not really doing much with the MLK assassination, shows the activism he played with the civil rights movement, which was little, but also how little he found himself encountered in being affected by the other race.
And like, do you ever see any like racial like discrimination there or no?
No, because we didn't. I can't remember, frankly, a black person, maybe a janitor or something, working at Nielsen.
Yeah.
This was not an integrated company.
Mhm.
There may have been some bias there. I don't. But
Yeah.
I can't. As I say, I can't recall. Now that you think of it, now that I think of it, I can't recall any black employees. So no, as a result, there were no.
Right in that moment, it seemed to me that my grandfather had just realized how blind he had been to racism and segregation of the time. These issues had never occurred to him because he didn't surround himself with people that were strongly affected by it. Being an important figure in the business world, with eventually being president of AC Nielsen, he had the power to involve blacks into his life, but didn't. This results in the idea of how powerful figures in the 1960s could have helped with segregation and civil rights, but a majority of them didn't because they were, in fact, segregating themselves into a bubble of unawareness.